don't know. I think it's kind of, books are very personal to me. So I read the way you do. I like to have my own, the voice that I've been hearing and the faces that I've been seeing, rather than having somebody else's. But I'm so happy when they do a production and cast John Thaw as Inspector Morse, and he's not at all like he is in the book. He's much better.
It is John Thaw. I just called him Colin Thaw. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I've got too many Collins going here. It is John Thaw.
There's so many. But they improved on Colin Dexter's books.
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, the books were never as interesting, I thought.
No, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
The screenplays are much, much more interesting.
I think so
and
too.
And the casting of John Thaw, I just went, oh, well, whoever did that, knew what they were doing.
He grew right into the part.
Oh,
it was so astonishing.
And Lewis, everybody in it, and I enjoyed reading his later books with those characters, and he kind of reworked them to make them fit in with the TV thing, which was exactly the right decision for him to do.
It was, and then he wrote a number.
He learned how to write.
He did, and there were a number of short stories that turned out to be, because we forever had people who would come into the bookstore and want to know why they couldn't buy the novel that was whatever, and of course the answer was it was a short story or something he wrote. It wasn't a book. It was never a book. And that led to a lot of confusion. I also like to read the way you suggest. I mean, I get, as you know, hundreds of books a week from publishers to review. And my first act is to strip out everything that came with it and bin it, or put it aside so I can look at it later, because I want to hit the book, just me and the book. I want it to be entirely personal. I'm a real believer in Marshall McLuhan and the medium as the message. I really believe that reading is a solipsis, interactive, private act, and that viewing is a group experience and much more passive. And I think while I love a lot of things about the internet and computers and all the rest of it today, I also think that we are creating people who are less able to read in the hands-on way that you and I describe.
Now let's pause to give praise to J.K. Rowling and her Harry Potter books.
I truly do. Not only that, or the Lord of the whatever it is.
God bless J.R.R. Tolkien. It's nothing is forever, and bad illiterate children are not forever either, because it's turning things around back in the direction.
I know, it's that kind of generation.
And once you get them hooked, once you get them hooked on books, they can never give it up, because why would they? Why would they?
One would like to
get their foot in that door.
Have you ever thought about writing a short story, or is
I wrote a short story.
You did
write a short story. It was published in a Malice Domestic anthology. It's called Honeymoon.
Cool.
Well, my agent called me and said they want a short story, and can you write one? I said, I don't know, let me see. And a week later I sent it to her and said, how is it?
That's interesting, because I would have thought in a way that, the canvas you like to work on
I am a novelist.
Yeah, exactly. I
am a novelist.
Is larger, and of course the whole point of a short story is it has to be short and have a hook to make it work.
Well, it's a charming, funny little short story, but I'm not by nature. I knew the minute I sat down to work on what would become Aunt Dimity's Death that I was a novelist. I just talk way too much for a short story writer.
Well, that sums it up pretty well. You know what? Just before we end here and our time is up, I wanted to mention that your new title is Aunt Dimity Snowbound, and I enjoy the way you take advantage of the British weather to create, well, I mean, it's got to play into your books. Volatile is the word that one uses.
I have been the victim of British weather too often not to have it be part of my books.
But I've always loved that kind of device, not device, but when characters end up in an enclosed setting, oftentimes, quote, the English country house, and there's snow outside so that no one can in or without leaving footprints, and you've got that wonderful isolation and then some event in a very closed environment. I'm a sucker for that every day, and I really enjoyed Aunt Dimity Snowbound.
Good.
Well, but it's such it has a real golden age feeling to it, even though it's a fresh interpretation and just your own. But I always like to travel back to that sort of, thing that is familiar, that I love so much.
Why not? I mean, it's comfortable, it makes you happy, and those are the things we should do more of.
Well, and it's also a great way to create suspense in a story. There are a lot of different ways that you can create a sort of a what next and a page turning effect.
For me it was one of the things that was so interesting was to work with so few characters.
That too.
I mean, that was
Yeah, you've got a cast of 3, you know, for most of the book.
For most of the book, it's 3. Yeah, exactly.
No, it is. I mean,
and that was intriguing because I'd been working with a lot more recently, and so this was kind of fun to go back to having something very intimate, very small, and very.
And not only that, but Lori basically on her own, because you know, because of the snow and all the rest of all this, she can cell phone Bill, and you can't really escape, you know, that sort of modern connection. She's basically there in this place where people can't reach her and say whatever's going to happen. She's more or less got to work it out, and I like that. You know, there's sort of a Woman in Jeopardy flavor to all that, or a Gothic flavor to all that.
Beats the Devil is very, you know, you've got her sort of stuck up in Northampton.
Right.
Well, you know, I like Lori on her own.
I do too, and yes, and it's true that when she was in Northumbria, it was the same situation. But I think, you know, sometimes you've got her so woven into Finch. And you know,
and that's another whole kind of story.
And that's a whole network.
And that's a whole part of her life. You know, the parts where she's on her own are very, if you look at what goes on for a year in her life, those parts are little tiny bits of it. Most of the time she's a mother and she's doing all sorts of neighborly things and she's involved in the life of her community.
Right.
But it's kind of fun to get her away once in a while.
Just like you.
Just like me.
And here we are. And you know what? We're done, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
I could go on. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, all of these thoughts and insights and all into your writing. It's really been fun.
See, I talk the way I write. You never know where it's going to go.
And that was the joy for me. I certainly hope it was the joy for all of you watching this show. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of The Criminal Calendar.